Hi everybody. Today, top complaints that non-believers make about Christians. Number one, Christians just worship the Bible. This isn't really true at all. It can certainly appear that way if you're looking through a prism at a very narrow part of the broader tapestry of Christian faith. Billions of people. Christians worship a living God, a God that is alive and that has turned on the Wi-Fi in the life of the Christian. And for your average everyday Christian, they have varying levels of devotion to Scripture, varying levels of authority given to Scripture depending on the sect. So if God turns on the Wi-Fi in the life of a Christian, the Bible is simply like having the password to the Wi-Fi. Number two, Christians don't use reason and logic. They just blindly believe and follow whatever they're told. Well, this might be true for some who grew up in the church and just lived a life where they never had to go outside and question it, but this is not true for most Christians by any stretch of the imagination. Christians use reason and logic with everything. In fact, if you read the Bible with the understanding of ancient works that precede it, for example, the works of Plato precede it by 300 years. When one thinks of Plato, Aristotle, and the Greek thinkers, they think of reason and logic. In fact, it says, in the beginning was the Logos, the Word. And as far as reason, one has to understand that the work of Plato leaves as a hanging chad the idea of justice in communal society. Well, Christian doctrine and theology and the life and teachings of Christ himself do offer this solution to justice. Number three, Christians and politics. You'll look on social media and see comments that say, all Christians lost my respect when they started following this side or that side. But Jesus teaches us to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That would indicate that whoever is in power, a Christian is to be a willing participant in civil society, demonstrating the best of themselves that they can in their Christian belief. A Christian should not be devoted to any particular nation state or political figure. Certainly there are subsets of subsets that do this, but we can't judge the entire Christian world of billions of people as if it were a monolith and they all share the same beliefs. Number four, Christians don't believe in science. How silly.
Do the research, Todd.
Many scientists are Christians. I think this idea comes from the fact that there is debate between origins. For example, evolution posits its theory. In the last couple hundred years, it has been a Darwinian paradigm of evolution. There are 6 different types of evolution. Christians criticize that several of them seem to be rooted in belief and not observable, testable, repeatable actions. So there is a debate that takes place in this particular realm of Christianity between the idea of intelligent design or supernaturalism and science and naturalism. The second point I'll make here is that even in the scientific world, evolution and naturalism are beginning to take quite a beating. The scientific community as a whole, if that even exists, let's say at least a vocal part of it, is now starting to say, well, we think the future is quantum, we think the future is in physics, and you can't turn on the television anymore without somebody saying that there are higher intelligences out there somewhere. So clearly science is becoming more open-minded and shedding the vestiges of the past that tried to analyze everything, whether it had a place doing it or not, through naturalism. This was my favorite coffee cup for a long time, since 2016. When my channel had grown to the point that I could get a merch store, I was so pumped. And I got this cup, and other people got the cup, and it finally broke. So it motivated me to revamp our Teespring Spring store, and I never quite knew what to do with it because we're a ministry. It's cheap to be like, buy my merch. I mean, we're talking about the most important subject in human history here. So I finally found something cool to do with it that says us. You have shirts like this. This picture I took at the Franciscan monastery is a 3D handmade, hand-carved art relief that says never forget. If you look below, you'll see more, and I was finally able to replace my favorite coffee cup with a Dads of the Church cup. Christians act like they're perfect and they judge everyone and they think they're better than everyone else. This is the most tragic one that I hear most often, and I think it comes because Christians will use methods of evangelism that worked somewhere way around the world, but it doesn't work at home. Let me be clear. Church isn't a country club for well people. It's a hospital for sick people. All Christians are struggling with all manner of things. And sometimes when evangelizing to somebody, those talking points don't make their way into the conversation. This is what I love about church history, and I think it's why I harp on how important it is. Because church history shows us how even the most crucial figures, the heroes who did the most wonderful things in human history, also had moments of great powerlessness, where they fell, where they made mistakes. And hopefully, when somebody looks in church history and sees this, they begin to change their view on how they look at the church. Because, interestingly, Christians and non-believers alike look at the institutional church as if it is supposed to be perfect, free of mistakes, and free of human sin, because it is God's institution. However, it's a human-run institution, which means it is always going to bear our mark. The best of intentions, but done with confusion and deception, and sometimes our ideas don't work. Number 6, relationships between prominent figures in the mainstream and Christians. We will often see news stories come out that suggest, oh, all Christians are bad because they follow this individual or that one. This particular singer says they're Christian, but wow, the message in their music isn't very Christian. What hypocrites they are. Very devoted Christians tend to live private, quiet lives. Once God turns the Wi-Fi on and we realize Scripture is the password, we spend the rest of our lives trying to figure out ways how we can please God through the things that we do. And if you encounter a Christian who isn't devoted to you and devoted to the poor, widowed, orphaned, or those either spiritually or physically imprisoned, that tells you what you know. We're all at different levels. Some are just now becoming Christians and don't know this. Some are way, 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 way down the path, and you might only meet a few of those types of Christians in your entire life. Number 7, Christians are critical about other faiths. They say things like, you only get saved by Christianity and anything else. Muslim, Hindu, pagan, Shintoism, Buddhism, none of them matter because we're only saved through Christianity. Well, 50 to 100 years ago, an individual could live their whole life in rural America and not even know there were other belief systems. Now we live in the digital age where every belief system in the world has been thrown in the swimming pool together. So there's a response of fear on the part of many Christians who grew up in churches being taught, this is how you evangelize. If someone asks, well, is Christianity the only right religion? Yes, of course. And some Christians are unwilling to begin sorting through the swimming pool and saying, all right, let's try to make some sense of this. Because clearly there is truth in Christianity. Is there truth in the others? How do we talk to others? What type of dialogue should we be having with others? How do we answer questions for people who want to say to us, well, what about the other religions and denominations? All I can tell you here is that you need to have grace with people. Change is hard. You can't look at society on one hand that is really struggling to redefine itself in an age for the better. The ideas are egalitarian. The ideas are equality. All these really good intentions. Well, the same thing is going to happen in Christianity. You're going to have wings of the Christian faith that come along kicking, screaming, and refusing, and you're going to have other parts of the Christian faith that are willing to step out front like Jesus did and take care of the Samaritan on the road regardless of their social stature. You're going to have Christians of every type, and you, as somebody who doesn't believe, need to be just as gracious with Christians as you would expect them to be with you. Number 8, power, corruption, televangelists, scandals in the faith. They're all hypocrites because look at what these Christians did. Are you really going to try to isolate the Christian world and say that something is wrong with it because humans do human things? You know, no one ever gets this far, but the saying by Lord Acton, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, goes on in the very next sentence to say good men are almost always bad men. And this is true of any group. We love a train wreck. Mainstream media has always shown us that train wreck. You can go back to papers in the 1700s and read about some events that are just staggering because people like the intrigue and the gossip. So there is nothing taking place in the Christian world that isn't taking place everywhere else. But we think the Christian church should be perfect because it's God's institution. We forget that the church itself, while mandates come from God as far as its protection, its claims, and the transmissions of its word, are still human-run institutions. Number 9, Christians are nothing like me. They are lost. They are part of a dying sect, a dying religion. Nothing could be further from the truth. If you look at history, Christianity has always grown like this. Periods of decline and overnight revival as if it were divine. Most people try to operate with the best of intentions, but given a large enough group and a long enough period of time, even our best intentions will dissolve into chaos and confusion and deception. It's an unfortunate reality about human nature that we don't have an answer for yet. Number 10, the concept of justice in Christianity bothers non-believers greatly because Christians continue to say that morals are absolute, that they are from God, and that justice can only come from God. Well, this comes from a couple areas. One, you'd have to know what the Greek philosophers wrote and the hanging chads they left about the concept of justice to see how Jesus Christ produces justice in this belief system. The reason this clashes with modern society is we are going from a period of time where the evidentiary method and a certainty about objectivity in truth, certain facts, and certain things that were studied are being replaced with what's called higher criticism. Higher criticism allows subjective speculation. Give me proof that Jesus ever existed. Give me proof that George Washington ever existed. It's kind of a silly line of argumentation, but it allows a wild speculation that puts a Christian in a position where they have to prove something that is not only easily provable, but is silly when that standard is held against any other type of ideas. All I can say is to remind you that Christians aren't a monolith. They don't all believe the same things. They don't all operate the same way. And as you interact with your neighbors and loved ones and friends, you're going to meet Christians who span a spectrum, brand new, influenced by this church, influenced by that church. Some who don't go to church but are deeply devoted and use their scripture and deep prayer to connect with God. Christianity is changing in the West, and it's changing a lot. But if you're operating under the premise that secular society and secular, atheistic, and philosophical ideas have some sort of edge on Christianity, you'd be sorely mistaken. In one sense, modern philosophy exists to try and fail time and again to come up with an epistemology that allows humankind to define morals, to do good, and to build a society that is good without God. And to date, it's like God 15, humans 0. So I hope that helps give some insight into Christians. I think you're going to notice in the future some things changing. The missions field has come full circle. It's now in the West. And that means that neighbors are talking to neighbors. And for those with eyes to see and ears to hear, the approach to missions is going to change quite a bit. We're beginning to understand the unchurched people and non-believers in a way that we never did before. We recognize that they're smarter than ever, that they have access to records that no one has ever had access to before, and that often the information they have outpaces the information that the brick and mortar churches have. I'll give you a good example in closing. Just getting Christians in the West to accept the idea that the canon of Scripture has different numbers of books around the world is a daunting task. It erodes belief systems. What? You mean to tell me this book of 66 books that I have devoted my whole life to, that there's 73 in some orthodoxies and 81 in others and wide ranges of numbers throughout? Yes. Now we have to analyze Christianity in the context of a global lens. Daniel 12:4 says it. People will go to and fro across the earth and knowledge will increase. I believe this scripture speaks very well to our time. And if you're speaking to Christians, you should approach them with the same respect that you would want somebody to approach and respect you. It's the key tenet of our faith to treat others like we would want to be treated. And I hope you're treated with respect when people argue with you. I know sometimes I get heated when I'm talking to some people, some friends of mine. I could act and perform better. The beautiful part about the Christian life is that I can always go and ask for forgiveness. And God has blessed us with the self-awareness to know when we've done wrong, when we need to ask for forgiveness, and when we can improve. If you're curious about Christianity at all, give my channel a try. I do church history and apologetics. And my hope is that in this lens, people will be able to see a different way through the prism about how the Christian faith is truth, how its truth claims are verifiable. And I try to do so with credibility and capital T, trust. If I don't know the answer, I will tell you, and I will present projects that give you as much objective information as I can without filtering it through my own opinions and presuppositions. Have a great day. If you want to support our work, you can. PayPal, Cashapp, Venmo. You can purchase a book I've written at amazon.com/author/Nicholas Garrett. My website is EvangelistNickGarrett.com. You can read my latest blog. You can find out about our ministry, which is a dual in-person and online ministry. And I am grateful that you came to hear this message today, and I would love your comments, right? If you're a non-believer, talk, right? We've got to open dialogue. We've got to be able to speak to each other. And if there's anything I can do for you, reach out. You'll find my email. You'll find my mailing address. I am not trying to hide. I am trying to be helpful. So look forward to talking to you next time.